So the organizational history again was very important to me. To me, it's sort of the big sort of the biggest architecture within the book, right? So again, my goal was to highlight the political work, right? I found lots of documents around the type of political work that Panthers did, and the sense that there was discipline around that. So it's like when you see something that says all laggards will be suspended immediately. People don't put that, it's like a syllabus, you know, you don't put in there, you know, and there's no late policy here unless you've been asked for that a million times. So the idea is that they were laggards, right? And the idea was to tell people that that was not going to be tolerated, right? Because it wasn't easy to be a member of the Black Panther Party. It wasn't glamorous, but many people felt like they, you know, dedicated their lives to that kind of work. So again, as I say up there about selling the newspapers, very, very important as well, right? So here's some images of the newspaper being sold. In particular, I like to show that the little kid over there, he's not a member of the organization, but because you could sell the paper for 25 cents and keep a nickel, it was incentive for young kids in the neighborhood to come in, grab a stack of papers, and go out and sell them, right? They had an amazing distribution plan, and the Black Panther became one of the most popular underground newspapers in the time period. And just to show you, like as she said, with the men serving breakfast, I mean, definitely everyone served breakfast within the organization. And the breakfast program was not just in Oakland. In fact, many of the programs were not necessarily largest or most deep within Oakland. So they've spread around the country to places like Baltimore and Illinois as well. Okay. And here's a great image of some of the Panther children who participated in one of their most long-standing programs, the Oakland Community School. And again, to think about the role that education played within the organization and all of the different things they were trying to do in terms of creating an alternative model, right? Not just talking about it, but to actually try to put it into place. Which is not to say that it was a flawed or they weren't problems or issues or drawbacks or anything like that, but I'm always astounded by what they were able to accomplish, right? Imagining that many of the people who joined the organization, if you started in 1966, you know, you had dropped out of high school, you know, you were 17, 16, 10 years later, 1976, you're now 26, 27, and as the Black Panther Party kind of ages as an organization, after COINTELPRO has such a devastating impact on the ability of the organization to thrive by attacking the leaders and things like that, you really have a slow death of the organization in the late 1970s, right? But the Oakland Community School becomes the program that gets centered around, that many, many people focus on. So I wanted to read just a little bit from the book. As I mentioned, when I first learned about Assata, I love that she put her poetry in the book. I think it really kind of speaks to people in a different way. It's just very emotional, I thought. So I included some of Erica Huggins' poetry in the book, just to give us a sense of what it might have felt like to be part of the organization at the time. Erica Huggins was someone who joined the Black Panther Party. She came from Connecticut. She drove down to LA with her husband, who was then killed. She was incarcerated. She was a young mother at the time. She spent much time in solitary confinement. You know, she was a political prisoner. She came out and continued to play a role with the leadership of the organization, especially in the Oakland Community School. And one of the things that she talks about in terms of what she was able to do to sort of keep grounded while she was incarcerated was to write poetry. She also talks a little bit about spirituality and the way that that played a role in her life. But I wanted to read this poem that she wrote called In Oakland. And it describes the mixture of hard work and comradeship that was so important for many people in the organization. So she says, East 14th Street, cement, tar, blinking traffic lights, the yellow of yesterday, the red of today, the green of tomorrow. Our lives have never been normal. We are part of tomorrows. Our todays and yesterdays quickly become a vague memory, so quickly do we move. Sometimes we can stop to look at ourselves in motion and love ourselves and each other. These are the good times, the comradely times, when we can celebrate life. And I wanted people who read the book to kind of imagine not just the work, but the joys, the comradeships, the friendships within the organization that kept it going. And that doesn't always mean that it kept it going in the most, conflict-free way. Just think about any large family gathering you may attend. You're all there. You're all committed to something, right? This larger notion of family, or we got to get together, it's a holiday, or whatever it is that you're committed to. But within there, you may have people that are, in conflict. But you put that conflict aside to at least come to the table. And that's what people in the organization did, right? They were able to be comrades despite the struggles that they had. And they were able to keep pressure around some of those struggles, because some of those struggles were struggles around gender, and some of those struggles were struggles around individualism, and other things as well that were eating away at sort of the flesh of the organization. But many, many people continued on until they couldn't, leaving letters like the one you saw in the video, which talked about why they were leaving and why that was the case. So that seems very important as well. I think that today this book really speaks to where we are in terms of Black liberation politics. When the poem says the red of today, as I was reading it, I was just thinking that the red of today makes me think of sort of the bloodiness of today, the wars of today, the undeclared wars, that are happening in our streets, in our communities, and then the wars that are being fought by the military by the military boots on the ground, as well as through, all sorts of sophisticated technology that no longer requires, that human hand or foot, right, but plays that role. So I think in a lot of ways the book speaks to where we are in the Black Lives Matter movement. Oh, that's okay. I was like, it's fine.
Trying to cut it off.
That's okay.
Technology.
I know our technology will betray us. I have learned. But I think it really speaks to where we are today in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. I imagined what it might be like to be a member of the organization and to go through all of the arrests, the deaths, the incarcerations of the people that you started out with. If we all said we were going to become a chapter of the Black Panther Party in 1966, by 1976, only this side of the room might be left. The rest of us may have been killed, incarcerated, left, infiltrated, became spies, right? It wasn't an easy life, but the political commitment was there. And I feel like today when we think about the ongoing struggles, it requires that political commitment, and it requires a commitment to organizational history and organizations. I think that today there's a lot of individualism, and oftentimes people don't act in community with actual people they can sort of, rub shoulders with. And agree with or disagree with and sit at the table with. And I think that kind of face-to-face organizing, which the Panthers really believed in and they really took to heart, right, this ideal of actually knocking on people's doors. I start off the book with me going down to Oakland in 1966 and wanting to interview a Panther, and he was like, well, just come in, he had no time for me, but he was willing to let me tag along whatever he was doing. So I would do that, and then we would be like knocking on the doors of housing projects, asking people if they wanted free health care. And if that was in 1996, today you're terrified to knock on someone's door unannounced, anywhere, right? Sad to say. But in this time period, we felt safe, comfortable doing that. People would open the door and be shocked that we were there offering free medical care. And yeah, okay, it was a clinic and you could only come on Wednesdays and there was a waiting list. But the idea of free medical care was, it was to challenge this idea of, what we pay for medical care, and to undercut that by having people question, the logic of the system. And that's what the Panthers really tried to do, is really make people question the logic of the system. And I feel like that's what we need to do today, because so many of those logics are accepted even in the way that we struggle against what we're fighting. So trying to think about that, I think there are a lot of sort of interesting lessons and food for thought for movements today to kind of take out of the history of the Black Panther Party in Oakland.